This is how the Mavericks can actually beat OKC. If you've been following the series, you know that the Mavs are up 2-1 after today's win. And while in game 1, I think a lot of people probably felt, oh, OKC is really just gonna maybe even sweep. Like, they just looked really dominant compared to the Mavs. And now that we've seen game 2 and game 3, I think people are starting to shift their opinion. The reason I think the Mavs are winning, besides obviously execution and all these other things, but part of that actually has to do with the fact that I think they're winning a lot because they are the experienced team. OKC is super talented, but we have to be honest, their first round matchup, obviously all are talented NBA players. Like, everybody in the NBA is talented. But a Pelicans team that did not have Zion, which we all know how good Zion is and how much pressure he puts on your defense, and there's no answer for Zion. So a team that's missing him, along with Brandon Ingram seeming to be kind of hobbled throughout the series, again, you play who's in front of you, so I'm not blaming them, but I felt like they didn't have a true test in terms of like being a number 1 seed, and now you get to see, what they can do against a team that is more comparable in terms of, just like level. I don't even want to say level of talent because that's not even correct. Just like the level at which they're playing at, partly due to injuries and all that stuff. I think OKC is on the right path for the future, but you could tell, especially in game 3 today, the experience just showed up big time, and I think that's a huge reason why the Mavs are winning and they won today. Like, there were just mistakes that OKC was making today that you make when you're a young team or you don't have much experience in the playoffs. Like, if you watch the NBA and you watch basketball, you know what I'm talking about. It's not like, it's just like something I can't explain exactly. There wasn't like one particular play that I can point out. Just watching the entire game, you could tell that the Mavs would kick it into second gear and OKC would be a little bit confused in a way. I don't even know if that's the right word. Because Kyrie Irving, we know, is obviously a champion. And so he knows how to handle the moment and all that stuff. We've seen him make huge shots. And then Luka, although he has not been to the NBA Finals, we know that Luka can control an entire game, and he's been to the playoffs a bunch of times and has knocked out opponents time and time again. So he has experience, and also, overseas he was playing when he was younger professional basketball. And there's just a bunch of players on the roster who may not be super experienced in the playoffs, but there are a lot of players who are getting minutes who have played in the playoffs or are just older players in general. Someone who's been in the league for a while, so even if they haven't been to the playoffs or recently, they at least have a lot of experience in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's take Jalen Williams, for example, who has been awesome this year in his second year. But besides the fact that this is his first time in the playoffs, it's still his second year. Like, he's still figuring out the NBA for himself, let alone playoffs, which is a completely different, ball game. I think another reason the Mavs are winning is their trade deadline moves. Now, if you watch this page, I don't know how much I've talked about him here, but I definitely have mentioned that I think Daniel Gafford is underrated. I thought he was really good in Washington, it's just nobody ever saw him play because he was on the Wizards. And now that he's been on the Mavs, he's getting his love. So shout out to him because he definitely deserves all the praise he is getting. He has been awesome for the Mavs. You have seen his, shot blocking and just his ability, obviously, to dunk. We know he can dunk the ball. And just his impact on the team. And I feel like you didn't get to see that on the Wizards because the team was not winning. But now people are giving him his praise. PJ Washington, these last 2 games, is shooting the lights out. I don't necessarily expect him to shoot, the way he's been shooting these last 2 games. But PJ Washington also was on the Charlotte Hornets, who really weren't winning either. And so, like, PJ Washington always did a bunch of good things, on the court. It's just, again, he was on a team that wasn't winning. So now that these 2 players, who were quality players, are in a position to make contributions and not have to be, PJ Washington, for example, I don't know if you would say he was the number 1 option, but I feel like he was definitely the number 2 option, at least at some point, because Miles Bridges wasn't there for a period of time, and LaMelo, has been hurt. So he has been a focal point. Now that he gets to be like the 3rd option or 4th option, however you look at it, he's thriving. I know he wasn't shooting very well, for a period of time when he came over to the Mavs. But he clearly got out of it at the right time because he is cooking. I also want to shout out Derrick Jones Jr. because his hustle on defense is also what's making, things happen for the Mavs. Like, his ability to put pressure on the defense, especially he is guarding Shea, a bunch of the time. And so although Shea is going to do his thing, but the point is to make it tough on the best players, which is why they put Lou Dort on Luka. And it does just feel like all the momentum is on the Mavericks side. And it does feel like they're going to win this series. And I know this sounds a little crazy, but I could actually see them winning 2 more straight. Like, I could see it being a 5-game series. But OKC, again, although they are very young and don't have a lot of experience, they are a team that plays together. So I'm not saying that it's going to be a 5-game, win for the Mavs. And you never know, OKC could come back from 2-1 because that's not impossible. It just feels like all the momentum is in the Mavs' favor. This experience is good for OKC. Whatever happens, if they make it through, great. Even more experience earlier on in their careers. But, even if they don't. And by the way, Shea has been to the playoffs before. I always forget that Shea went to the playoffs with Chris Paul, right? Like when Chris Paul was on OKC, I'm pretty sure Shea went to the playoffs with them because the trade was for Paul George, the Clippers, and that was Chris Paul, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was included in that. So Shea has been to the playoffs. But it also, is a way different situation now that he's the number 1 option, and it's like his team. So, although it may not be his first time in the playoffs, it's kind of his first time being a focal point. So we'll see what happens, but it really does feel like the Mavs turn the series around because game 1 didn't look good, but it looks like they're going to win.